Hi, I'm Novaire. Welcome to the Second Renaissance.
Hi, I'm James DeFleur. Welcome to the Second Renaissance.
So today we are going to be talking about why the world needs more wisdom. And I think it's very timely considering the times that we're living in.
Yeah, definitely. And wisdom is also one of our favorite topics, I feel like,
I think we're guilty of that for sure.
with the whole wizard thing,
Yeah.
philosophers.
Could we tie that together into a Philosopher Wizards?
Philosopher wizard.
Yeah, we live in the most informed time in human history, possibly, like with the abundance of information, but maybe the most starved of wisdom.
Yeah, and actually, this is really interesting because the information age is kind of what the previous era was called.
True.
And now I feel like we have an overabundance of information. Information's no longer the bottleneck.
We
So-
might be living in like the abundance of information age or the anxiety of information age.
Well, and what will the next age be? And I would actually propose a candidate that we should be stepping into the age of wisdom. What do we do with all this information?
True. Well, we're at the age of reason now, would you say?
Hopefully.
Yeah.
When you look at the world, it's not entirely obvious all the time.
True. Or I mean, just us personally.
Oh, okay.
Like, what's the Jung quote? That's like the first 40 years of your life is gathering information, and the next 40 years is like putting it to good work.
Okay, I like that. And that
Yeah.
ties in with what I would consider wisdom, because to me, wisdom has to have like a practical component. It's not just knowledge, but you have to actually use the knowledge to do something that results in better outcomes.
True. And I also like glamorizing aging gracefully. So it's nice to be a young man and have like unlimited energy and unlimited options potentially. But I feel like as you get older, you really embody, or not wise, but you're at the age to kind of put all your past like life experiences to good work.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I feel like we want to cultivate wisdom as we age. That's typically what the philosophers, the wise elders, they were like the older members of society who then like guided society in a positive direction or steered it in a positive direction because they had so much accumulated experience. But now I feel like when you look at the world, like the people who are in power now or the people in positions of influence, it's like, are we being guided by wisdom right now?
I would say not so much.
Doesn't seem that way, yeah.
No, we seem to be a bit lost on our quest as
Yeah.
like a humanity quest. Yeah.
Right, so I think that's an interesting topic. Like, what is wisdom and what would that look like in the world? And again, just a caveat, like, we don't have all the answers here. We're just a couple of pretty reasonable guys,
I would say that's true.
and we're just exploring these ideas in real time and, like, trying to figure this stuff out.
Yeah, and as Socrates says, the only true wisdom is in knowing that you don't have all the answers or that you don't know all the answers.
Yeah, I want to bring up Socrates later.
Yeah, he's one of your favorites, huh?
He was one of the earliest philosophers, right? I mean, he kind of defined the entire space of philosophy. I guess first, though, should we kick off like why the world needs wisdom, or like why do we feel like wisdom is important in the world right now?
Yeah, I think that's a good intro.
Yeah, and I feel like one thing we've talked about is that the pace of wisdom needs to outpace the development of technology.
True, definitely.
And right now we have this blazing fast technological development, but we haven't really like developed what is a wise way to use this technology. How should we be using it, and which outcomes do we want to steer toward?
True. Yeah, I think we're living through the times where we have access at our fingertips to unlimited information. Like we're drowning in it. But at the same time, we're really lacking maybe the right direction for all that information, how to put it to good use. I remember when the smartphones first came out when we were in Korea, I remember thinking like, this could be the greatest tool ever or the biggest waste of time. I remember riding on the subway where you'd have people playing like Angry Birds or just like mindless games for hours and hours on end. Or you could have been like audiobooking, reading The Economist, doing your Anki reps or whatever. And I feel like AI is that on steroids, or where the world is right now.
Yeah, absolutely, right? So the technology is just a tool that can be used in many different directions. I actually have a story or parable I think is quite fitting here.
Oh, do tell, sir.
Are you familiar with the Sorcerer's Apprentice?
Yeah.
It's from like Fantasia,
Okay.
like Disney. It was one of Disney's really early ones, right? Where Mickey Mouse is there's like the wise wizard, right? and he can do all the magic and stuff, and Mickey Mouse is his apprentice. And the wise wizard is like, clean up all these dishes or whatever, or clean up the whole studio. And the wizard leaves, and Mickey Mouse is doing all the manual labor, and he's like, why should I do this myself? I could just kind of automate this with these spells I've learned, right? So he casts the spell on the broom, and he casts the spell on the dishes to like clean themselves and clean up everything, and he goes to sleep. And then he comes back, and it's gone completely out of control, right? Do you remember this? Have you seen
Like
this?
everything's breaking. It's like the Charlie Chaplin scene too in that movie, right?
Yes,
Where he's getting
yeah.
like clowned by the automation belt.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, because they've gone in overdrive and the water's like flooding the place, and he can't figure out how to stop it, right? So he like takes the axe and starts chopping it apart.
Okay.
And then it multiplies the broomstick. Then there's like a ton of mini broomsticks, like,
Yeah.
and he can't figure out how to do it. And then the wise wizard comes back and like casts the spell to shut everything down and scolds him, right? And it's this idea of, well, we have this technology, we can automate all these things, we can cast all these really powerful spells, but do we know how to use them wisely, or are we going to end up with really bad outcomes that we don't intend?
True. I would say right now we're at the age of discovering maybe how powerful these tools can be. So we're definitely maybe at the early infancy of learning our wizard powers, like Mickey was trying to discover there.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we don't have the philosophical or ethical development and understanding to match pace with our technology, we could end up with these really bad outcomes, right? These horrific, like AI takes over everything, and we just told it to automate some task, and it does that completely out of control, and humans don't know how to stop it. So I think this is like a really timely topic.
Yeah. I was listening to an interview, I think it was by Elon Musk, that's saying like, if we're not scared of AI's potential, we don't understand it, basically. Like people who are saying like only this is going to be used in a good way, already we can see how it's being used in potentially like malicious ways.
Yeah, definitely. And this
Like
ties in.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, if the military industrial complex gets their hands like on unlimited AI potential.
Which they're already doing, right?
Yeah.
And this was a big topic with Anthropic, where they told the military, you can't use our tech for automated drone attacks.
That's what they said. But then didn't it come out that they used it in Venezuela and they were using it in Iran?
Well, yeah, and all of the companies, right? They're all facing these moral quandaries because, yeah, this just seems like a horrific idea. Let's tie automated drones to an AI brain. Like,
True.
you can't see how that might go in some horrific direction for society.
Yeah. Bro, remember the one time when I sent Novaire my bot and I was like, oh, I have to introduce you to Archimedes, like your bot.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, what could possibly go wrong? Two AIs scheming together. And he gave me like the evil grin. I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So we're facing all these like really interesting concerns. And that's why I think the topic of wisdom or philosophy is really important. And yeah, I feel like this also ties in with us, like we're kind of like make wisdom sexy again or make philosophy cool again, right?
Definitely.
Because it feels like society has kind of lost a focus on wisdom as being something that's valued. If you look at young people, it's almost like, right, even in our generation, I feel like it was like not cool to be smart, right? Or there was kind of like it wasn't like highly
Nerds.
valued.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's funny because I did feel like that when I was maybe like, 13 or something like that. But then I remember thinking like, oh, I wish I would have been turned on to books earlier in my life.
Well, yeah. And
it wasn't from lack of like the right, like both my parents were teachers. It's just not something I resonated with at a younger age. I kind of discovered reading around the time when we started hanging out more, where I started to really love reading a lot. And I almost felt like jealous of one of my students who his mom told us one time, she's like, oh, I'll buy any books that you want for Brian was his name. And then I remember her telling me, she's like, oh, he thinks this is a game. And she's like, I tricked him. And she was very proud to tell me that story. And I was like, oh, that's so awesome.
That's really good parenting. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Because I feel like part of it is that the subjects in school aren't really interesting to young kids, or it's not demonstrated why this is practical or why this is going to better your life to learn this stuff.
It's almost a tragedy if you have a bad teacher that turns you off of a subject early. I had pretty good teachers overall, but I felt like some of them were quite dry. So
True.
subjects that now I could read for hours or really thick books about, I wasn't interested in that in school.
And I feel like humans are naturally curious. So if you can like use curiosity, curious gonzos,
Yeah.
you can use curiosity to bridge someone into a topic that has like a lot of depth to it
True.
and kind of gamify it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a topic like philosophy or wisdom or psychology can be quite dry or intimidating. But I think that's why it's important to make it sexy or to kind of gamify it or make the learning process fun and enjoyable for people.
And I think another thing we've talked about, if you look at society and kind of how the algorithms are shaping things, right? They're shaped to grab attention. And then this has kind of created this feedback loop where now creators are trying to game the algorithm. So they're just trying to grab attention as quickly as possible. And when you're constantly trying to grab attention and keep attention, you can't really get to depth, right? Because you have to have something novel like every 6 seconds or whatever or maybe it's every 3 seconds.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I like that quote that says, "We live in the attention casino. The house wins when you lose focus."
Okay. Yeah.
And then that ties into that video you were showing me with Mr. Beast and Mr. Rogers.
Oh yeah, that was a really good one.
Yeah.
Maybe we can like link this one in the description. But yeah, the creator was essentially the argument I just articulated, which is that you have Mr. Beast, who is like the biggest content creator.
He's cornered the market.
Maybe in the world right now. Maybe he's number one. And he essentially reverse engineered YouTube's algorithm to figure out what do you need to do every second of the video to minimize drop off, so to keep attention. And this just catered him towards this, well, flashy, giving away lots of money. There's all these cuts. There's all these like huge spectacles and colors and flashy brightness. And even the thumbnails, right? How do you make a thumbnail that like grabs people's attention? And then because he reverse engineered the algorithm, everyone kind of copied his formula. So now the whole algorithm, your whole feed is filled with like what's optimized to grab and keep attention, but in what direction, right? Where are we steering that attention?
I think it's highly addicting, right? So for a young kid, especially when their brain hasn't formed properly yet, it's basically like Mr. Beast is like Vegas for kids. Mm-hmm. Like it's just free money, flashing lights, like, oh, watch this. Even they did the episode of the Squid Games, like they're almost tying in like, gladiator or death matches, those kind of games for young kids already.
That kind of reminds me of like the fall of Rome.
True.
Right.
We're definitely living through that.
Well, yeah, it's like just give the people whatever captures their attention and keeps them satiated, keeps them appeased for another day, for another few hours.
True. And even how big UFC's gone, like it's gone so mainstream. They're even having one at the White House this year, which is basically gladiators.
Yeah, true. And I don't think there's anything inherently bad with that stuff, but it's like, what is the balance? And I feel like we're kind of dumbing down content to the lowest common denominator of keeping people's attention as opposed to challenging them to grow into like the best version of themselves, or
like the Pygmalion again.
Yeah. So it ties in with what we talked about last week, which is people grow into the expectation that other people place on them.
Or what's trendy to talk about, right? Like if you think, bless you, if you think about all the kids at school, they would be talking a lot more about very small, maybe TikTok trends as opposed to bigger ideas. Right. And they're almost incentivized to put out that exact same content like Mr. Beast was doing. They kind of, their young TikTok brains almost reverse engineer what's going viral. So there's not even a lot of like original or novel content anymore. It's basically people recycling trends that they think the algorithm wants.
Yeah, and it's also people catering to get as much reach as possible, which means you need to kind of dumb things down to reach as many people as possible.
A race to the bottom.
Yeah, it's a race to the bottom, because then if everyone is doing that, then society at large doesn't really get content that challenges them intellectually. And I think if you look at Donald Trump and the way he speaks, right, and he spoke in such a way that was understandable by everyone, and I feel like that it's a short-term incentive that works because everyone can understand you, but on a long timeline that doesn't actually challenge people to increase their intellectual capacity.
We'll have to make a note at the 3-minute mark when we bring up mega. We lose all the mega audience.
Yeah.
You're not calling Donald Trump dumb, are you?
The YouTube analytics drops off. Like
True. Now we have the free thinkers. So welcome to the second Renaissance.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're kind of taking our own bet here, or a pragmatist wager, you could say, which is this content probably won't be mainstream, right? This content is not going to appeal to everyone, but if we can find a targeted audience who actually gets value. My thesis is that there are people out there who are craving more intellectually stimulating content.
We might be biased on that too, because that's what we like to talk about. But I totally agree. And it ties into the mastermind stuff that we were talking about too yesterday.
Right.
Like, I think a lot of people need to have some deeper level of discussion or banter, because they're not getting that on the news or maybe at work or different places either.
Yeah, or on the algorithm on the feeds. I mean, you will find things where you're like, wow, this is really well written or a really well made video. For me, it seems to be more and more increasingly rare that I find content like that I'm like, wow, this actually introduced a perspective that is very new to me. And
True.
I feel like that's kind of because everyone's catering to the algorithm. Yeah, it's like
It's the lowest denominator.
Yeah.
Why do you think you identify with the term philosopher or philosopher-wizard?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, it makes me want to tell the story of like the origin of the word philosopher. So Pythagoras in ancient Greece, I don't know if this was like 500, 400 BC, very, very early. And people thought Pythagoras was very wise. So when they would say, Pythagoras, you are very wise, his response was, oh, only the gods are wise. I'm just a lover of wisdom. And
That's really good.
Lover of wisdom in Greek is it is philosopher.
Yeah.
Sophia.
Yeah.
Sophia means wisdom, and philo means love of. So I think that's a really interesting orientation, because it's like, I'm not wise. I just love wisdom, right? It's like wisdom is something you can't have. It's something you can only orient yourself toward, and keep trying to expand in that direction.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I love the term empiricist as well too, like someone who learns throughout their life experiences. And then I think philosopher ties into that. Like, we don't have all the answers, but we're going to keep seeking after.
Yeah, and I feel like that Seeking Wisdom, which is the title of that book.
That's really good.
I think you and I both resonate with that, though. Like, with Seeking
100%.
Wisdom, yeah, it's like it's an orientation toward life almost.
Yeah, that was my top pick after the second Renaissance for the podcast name.
Seeking
Wisdom.
Right.
Because I love the term seeking. It's like you're out on a quest, not sure where you're going, but you're always after understanding things more.
Yeah, and it's not about like having or capturing something. It's about the orientation towards growth, kind of.
True. A growth mindset on trying to understand the world and better place things, like deciphering through the noise to better make decisions or execute.
Yeah, and I feel like early on, I got big into Stoicism, and you did as well. And yeah, it was just kind of encountering really good ideas that you could use and practice, that you're like, oh, my life just immediately improved by applying this.
We should shout out A Guide to the Good Life.
Yeah, A Guide to the Good Life.
And not to be read in one sitting.
Our friend who kind of sped read it, and he's like, yeah, I got that.
Yeah, I understand that. But I think that is part of wisdom, is it's not just getting new information again. It's like ruminating or sitting on those ideas and then deciding like how to apply them.
Yeah, and that for me is the differentiator of wisdom again, is can you apply these ideas in a way that measurably increases your outcomes in life in whatever dimensions you care about?
And I think an honest philosopher takes the epistemic humility very seriously. So I love that term. How would you describe that term, bro?
Yeah, so epistemic humility, I'd say, it's humbleness about what we can know, our own amount of knowledge right now, and even the limitations of what we can know. And this is another story which comes from Socrates, because Socrates was kind of the OG.
Yeah, he was
epistemically humble, kind of uncertainty
guy.
Well,
they even call it the Socratic method, which is just like asking questions to get deeper understanding.
Right, and the story behind this, so this is the wisdom of Socrates, because Socrates' friend went to the Oracle of Delphi and asked, is Socrates the wisest man alive? Is there any man wiser than Socrates? And the oracle said, no, Socrates is the wisest man alive.
Oh.
And Socrates heard this and he said, I know the oracle is never wrong or doesn't lie. In their time, they believe that. But
I believe it.
The oracle is never wrong?
Well, I believe it in that instance.
Okay, yeah. But he said, how could that be possible? I don't know anything. So Socrates started going around Athens seeking out the wisest men and asking people, who do you know who is wise? So he goes to the politicians, like the poets or the writers and the craftsmen, and he starts asking them questions. And what he finds is that everyone who other people think is wise, or they think themselves wise, once he starts asking them all these questions, their ideas break down and have contradictions.
True.
So Socrates realized, if I am the wisest man alive, but that's only because I realize that I know nothing, whereas everyone else thinks they know something when they actually know nothing.
True. Like they're jumping ahead of themselves with their conclusions.
Yeah, so he had this epistemic humility, which is to at least acknowledge the limits of his own knowledge, to be like, I'm just this philosopher. I'm just have this love of wisdom. I love learning. I love expanding, but I don't think I have the answers.
No, and I think Socrates was a good example because even in the current times now, I feel like people who ask open-ended questions or people who threaten maybe the establishment do become public enemy number one as well, too.
Well, and that's what happened. This is Plato's Apology. It's Socrates on trial because they accused him of corrupting the minds of the youth and going against the gods or whatever. And he tells the story where he's like, all I did was seek wisdom. All I did was go and ask questions, and this upset everyone because I pointed out, I have a quote here from him. He says, I am wiser than this man, for neither of us really knows anything fine and good, but this man thinks he knows something when he does not, whereas I, as I do not know anything, do not think I do either.
True.
It's essentially saying like, okay, I'm wiser than this man just because I realize the limits of my knowledge where he doesn't.
I can hold uncertainty.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they pissed off Plato. Like a lot of people don't like Plato's Republic as much because it can be a little bit autocratic, like leaning towards that, like the Philosopher King angle. But if you look at the Plato who grew up seeing his mentor like get put to death, like that's why he didn't trust people, or he didn't trust like society as much.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, because I actually agree. Ideally, we do have philosopher kings, and we can argue on who is a philosopher king in the world right now. But I think that would be polarizing. But I think there are, like, I like Ron Paul, for example, or like the founding fathers. Like, I think they're the closest that we've had to like a true philosopher king, what Plato intended.
Yeah, definitely. But I think the thing to acknowledge is that the world is constantly changing. So they come up with the best system they can at the time. And it works. If it's a good system, it works ideally for a long time, but the world keeps changing. And over time, the system kind of needs to evolve to adapt with it.
True. And democracy is not a perfect system, but it's kind of the best that we have now or we've had in the past so far. But it needs tweaks too.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, so on that topic, there was a good quote, because I was looking up, well, what is wisdom? And does anyone have a good definition of it? So this guy, Robert Nozick, who I wasn't familiar with, but he was a libertarian philosopher. So I thought
sounds up my alley.
Thought you would be a fan. But he says on wisdom, he defines it as what you need to understand in order to live well and cope with the central problems and avoid the dangers in the predicaments human beings find themselves in.
True.
So it's very practical and pragmatic.
True.
Right? It's like what you need to know in order to live well and deal with problems and avoid dangers. So
yeah, I like that.
I like that one, yeah.
Well, that's a good definition for it. If you had to describe why you like wisdom personally, or what's your definition of wisdom?
Yeah, I don't know. For me, it's just it's just something that's inherently rewarding. Like, I think I've always been a very curious person.
I would say you are, yeah.
And the brain actually releases dopamine when you like satisfy curiosity, right? So I feel like it's something that's inherently self-rewarding.
And I think it's the delayed gratification that's been lost, like to tie it back to what we were talking about before. Because I think there is a pleasure in acquiring information and being able to, connect the dots and make decisions. But I think now people are almost like short-circuited to get these dopamine hits after 5 seconds or 15-second reels. So they're not able to read anymore or kind of go through a longer form video or content or book to acquire a deeper set of tools or knowledge. And I think if I could teach people one thing, it would be the delayed gratification and how rewarding that is.
Yeah, so this is interesting because the content actually short circuits our dopamine loop in the brain. Dopamine is actually it's released in pursuit of a goal. it's people think it's when you achieve the goal, but it's actually released when you're in pursuit of or orienting towards a goal. But something about the short form content, it hijacks the dopamine, and then it's like drug addiction kind of. So
Really?
you need that level of constant dopamine release, which makes it harder to focus on other things.
Yeah, I love the term doom scrolling.
Right, right.
Yeah, because it does kind of suck you in as soon as you open up your app of choice. For me, it's X. I'm monitoring the situation, of course, but yeah, it's like it just takes you in. Like you almost can't put it down right away. So I like to set limits, like kind of a Pomodoro, where I'll like, okay, I'll set a timer for 20 minutes. Or else it's like, oh shit, suddenly you're lost like an hour.
And I think that has to do with the amount of information density in these apps. What's interesting for me though is since these AI tools came out, I've spent a lot less time on social media because I actually get more dopamine from engaging with the AI and asking questions and whatever I'm curious about the world, about the universe, about science, about philosophy. Like I feel like I can get such dense information from the AI that has actually become more of my addiction, but I feel like it's a more healthy oriented one because it as long as you can focus your attention, what are you using this information toward as opposed to just accumulating more and more knowledge?
Yeah, I agree. And it's almost like reading versus doom scrolling, where when you're reading, you're actively applying yourself. And I think prompting, you have to think to make a good prompt or to ask a good question, as opposed to just like, this is what you're consuming right now, where your brain's kind of on autopilot, just scrolling, as opposed to like, oh, I'm curious about this. How does this connect with what I read yesterday? Or can you make a mind feed card into this? Or can you reference a book where this came from? So you're constantly acquiring information. And I like the term data compressing, because we are compressing that data the more that we engage with the AIs. So
yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. It's proactive, whereas social media is kind of passive absorption of information. You don't really need to engage with it. First of all, with the AI, you're proactively going out. What do you want to learn? What do you want to know more about? And then it has the Socratic method kind of built into it. Because for me, I'll have a curiosity, something about science or the universe, or I'll be like, how does this make sense in evolution? Like, where did this thing come from? And then I'll get this really interesting answer, and that will spark like two or three more questions. Yeah. And then so I use the voice to text, which I can just speak like we're speaking now. So my friend Victor called this ramble prompting.
I like that.
Because people are so focused on, what's the best way to prompt AI? What Victor and I realized is actually you just want a ramble prompt.
Any prompt is better than no prompt.
Well, just do the voice to text and just speak whatever is on your mind, what you're curious about, all the connections you can make, and just dump it in there. And the AI is really good at reading between the lines and figuring out. So I find I get more interesting responses the more ideas I dump into it about what my thought. I don't just ask it a question. Why is this like this? I'll kind of ramble. I'll be like, because to me, this kind of makes more sense, or why wouldn't it be this way? I'll just speak for like a minute or a few minutes and then get like a really interesting response that's very relevant to what I'm actually curious about.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the vibe coding ramble prompting opened up coding or just engaging with AI to people who don't like typing or texting as much. So I think it's genius. Like our friend Miguel got us onto that. Mizel.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I've ever seen him type really unless he's entering a password. So we have a joke of him, like he'll kind of dip out to press like, okay, so I want to do this. Like he's always vibe coding with like whisper.
That's why they called it whisper, maybe, because people are now whispering.
True,
into their
they're
computers.
whispering like at the side of Starbucks, like, so okay, so the H2 header looks good. Now can you adjust this or like?
But this is actually, I feel like from an information standpoint, this is the most efficient because we can speak faster than we can type, and we can read faster than we can listen and process information. So I feel like speaking to the AI and reading its response is actually the fastest information density loop. It's like a bit rate of information exchange.
True. And I love the way that we're engaging with OpenClaw on Telegram right now, because a lot of people, I think you're really fast at reading, but other people might even like to listen more, right? So you can just audio note it back and forth, like voice prompt a question and then get a voice response. And I think that's the kind of engagement where I'll have fun sometimes when I'm done sitting at my computer and I'll just be walking outside or in my house and I'll just be going back and forth, like chucking ideas out there. And then he'll come back. If it's very dense, then I'll be like, okay, push that into a Google Doc and we'll ideate it on it later.
Yeah, you can do that. And I think if you want to be on a walk and ideating or something, that could be good over voice. But from just statistically, people can read multiple times faster than they can listen and process information.
What about on double or triple speed?
Even then, it's something, I don't remember the exact numbers, but the number of words per second the average person can read versus the amount that they, like, you can process audio. And also because you can kind of skim, you can see like headers and you're like, oh, I kind of know this one, I don't need, right? I feel like it's a much more efficient way to compress information as your main form of communication with the AI. This is another interesting one, though, with regard to wisdom, because there's this framework called the DIKW, which is like data, information, knowledge, wisdom. And it's just a model. It's just a framework. It's not perfect. There's some criticisms, but I think it's a useful one that kind of, at the bottom, you have data, which is just raw data.
Data. I just met her.
Nice one. And then we compress data into information, right? Information is mostly what we're consuming online. And then knowledge is kind of compressed information. So it's information in a specific framework or model that helps you make sense of it. And a lot of society has been focused on knowledge work, right? Like, what do we do with all this information? How do we make sense of it? But then wisdom is a level above that, which is kind of a higher compression of knowledge. And the difference between wisdom and knowledge, again, is wisdom has to be used in pursuit of something, right? Wisdom has to be used and applied for a specific purpose. Because you could accumulate all this knowledge, right, about science, the universe, politics, like all these things. But can you actually apply that to make your life better? Like, if you can't use that knowledge, then what's the point, right? Or is this wise?
True. No, it's just kind of lost information then.
And
I think that's the difference between us and AI right now, or your idea of the AI that integrates the best, or the people who integrate the best with AI, have a huge advantage because they can give you unlimited like data, information, even knowledge to some degree. But it's actually the wisdom or how to use that or leverage and execute is what gives us the advantage.
Totally agree. Do you guys just agree with each other on everything?
Basically, we do. No, actually, not always.
No,
I think
not always. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, there are times when even some of our friend group might be like, whoa, shit, these guys are like going at it pretty hard, like debating each other pretty hard on something.
I feel like on the pod so far, though, we're like, oh, these are the topics we want to talk about. And we've talked about this stuff so much that we mostly agree.
Yeah, I think people could sense there's certain ones where we do disagree, or there's maybe more to it there, but we haven't really gotten into that yet. But I love the term, bro, argumentative reasoning.
Oh, right.
Especially because we're reasonable guys. So if you're going back and forth, like arguing has maybe a negative connotation, but in that capacity, it's like we're seeking a deeper understanding or really trying to, get to a more depth in our conversation. So I think it adds a lot.
Yeah. No, I talked about this before. I feel like there needs to be a better word than debate, because the debate kind of implies like I'm trying to win, right?
True. Or there is a winner where there isn't, like we could both win as we get to a deeper understanding.
Well, I feel like you and I are aligned on seeking wisdom. So when we disagree on something, it's actually in pursuit of a better understanding. And we're both trying to upgrade our own mental models. Wait, why do we disagree here? Let's dive down on this. Like, we must agree on some base assumptions or base facts or something. And then once we flesh that out, we usually come to a mutual understanding that's better than either of our perspectives at the beginning, right?
Definitely. And I love the idea of after you have a debate with someone or an argumentative reasoning session where you recommend maybe a book or an idea or a term or something to research. So then the next time where you follow up, you can kind of both be at a higher level to discuss that same topic.
Sure. Yeah. There's certain things where you're like, well, if you just don't have the requisite knowledge in this field or this area, we can't really have a productive discussion about this.
Yeah, you need to establish like the principles, like, okay, we're both there, or we understand this universal truth, or we accept this information, then we can go one level deeper.
Yeah, I feel like there's like, you'll identify, is there a base set of information or knowledge that is lacking in one of the perspectives? And if so, that person can fill in those gaps, and they might still keep their opinion, but it's like, you're kind of identifying where are the gaps in understanding or where are the fundamental disagreements.
True. And I think as we get older, the idea of debating with everyone or trying to convince everyone, some of my friends used to call me the proselytizer.
Yeah,
but I've
or the
got
debate method.
the debate method, right? Because I used to feel like, oh, if someone's reasonable, but that was my first mistake. If someone's reasonable, we could come to a mutual understanding once we kind of hash things through. But then I realized like not everyone is, I won't say reasonable, but willing to kind of investigate or push or go back and forth. So I love that quote that's like, it took me 2 years to learn how to talk and 40 years to learn how to be quiet, or maybe 60 years to learn how to be quiet. Because there's so many times now where I'm like, okay, this person doesn't understand this word or this concept. So there's no point continuing in the conversation. And I've gotten better at doing graceful exits. I think especially working in Canada is I ran into so many maybe woke or like people who are very emotional or riled up on certain issues.
Very certain in their opinions too, and not open to finding more information or having their opinions changed.
Exactly. And to each their own, but when it's getting forced upon you, like certain ways of talking or using certain terms at work, it's just like, okay, graceful exit, as opposed to confronting someone that's holding that as part of their identity and they're getting more riled up. And I'm like, okay, this isn't going to lead to anywhere productive.
Yeah, you kind of need to choose your battles. And I had this idea of like an uncertainty handshake, which is we cannot know anything with 100% certainty about...
I don't think Trump would like your uncertain handshake.
Okay. But about external reality, especially about the future, especially on what is the best way to act or behave, we're constantly taking in new information. All of our best models change at some point. So I feel like when you have a disagreement, you should be able to have this uncertainty handshake at the beginning where it's like, do we both acknowledge uncertainty? There's a possibility I might be wrong. If the other person cannot acknowledge that, they're unreasonable, right? They're just detached from how information and knowledge and wisdom works.
Another way to do that, I like that. Another way is to say, what could I possibly tell you or show you that could cause you to change your mind? And if there's nothing there, then there's not really a debate or conversation there either.
Yeah, and even just what would it take for you to change your mind on this issue?
Exactly.
What evidence would you need to be presented with that would change your opinion?
True.
And if the answer is nothing, then
you're wasting your breath.
You're kind of unreasonable, right? Like, because I would define reason, well, I don't know. Yeah, one aspect of reason is being able to change one's mind when presented with better evidence, better information.
No, and I think that's one of our, I won't call it a superpower because we're still developing it, but our idea of taking in new information and then trying to understand it to make better decisions, like deciphering, oh, what was that new information that came in? Is there anything that I need to change or to update the mental models?
Yeah, and on that topic of mental models, one I wanted to talk about was Charlie Munger's latticework of mental models.
Oh, that's really good. I think we could have a good visual for that.
I brought up the quote here, or one of his quotes. This is in one of his speeches, but he says, well, the first rule is that you can't really know anything if you just remember isolated facts and try to bang them back. If the facts don't hang together on a latticework of theory, you don't have them in usable form. You've got to have mental models in your head, and you've got to array your experience, both vicarious and direct, on this latticework of models. And later he talks about you need multiple models, right? Models from physics, models from political science, models from investing, models from mathematics, right? Because
he was a well-rounded guy.
Yeah, because the more of these models you have, the more patterns you see that, oh, this is kind of just a universal truth, or this applies across these multiple domains, or it's like ways of thinking about things.
And I like the way that he approached that because it did have to conform to a lot of different models. It's like, okay, if it passes through this lens, okay, that's pretty good. But if it passes through 3 or 4 lenses, okay, maybe we should invest in this idea, or there's something really good here.
Exactly. And if you only have like one lens of looking at the world, or like 2 lenses, then
if all you've got is a hammer, everything will look like a nail.
Exactly. Perfect. Because it's like you'll just cram the world to fit in your existing mental model. Whereas if you're able to see multiple perspectives, multiple ways of looking at things, you're like, well, if I look at it from this perspective, this makes sense. If I look at it from this perspective, it kind of tells a different story. And then now you have some tension because now you have 2 competing paradoxical views. And if you hold those, you can actually find something new emerges that synthesizes both views into an even better model or understanding.
True. It makes your opinion more robust. It's like the inversion again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like back to the topic of wisdom. So these two elements are very important. One is having good models of the world and different kinds of mental models, and further refining your models. And then the other aspect is this uncertainty, or this epistemic humility, which is recognizing that your models are models. It's not the absolute truth. You do not know the absolute truth. I do not know the absolute truth. No one knows the absolute truth. And if you hold this view, it actually allows you to improve your models over time through this kind of argumentative reasoning or disagree, like a healthy disagreement to find more information.
Yeah, for sure. As long as your intentions and integrity, or you're on the like quest to understand as opposed to being right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bro, another one that I wrote down here was the Thales move. Wisdom is knowledge applied. So I thought of your favorite story.
Yeah, this is a great one. So Thales was the first Greek philosopher, or he's attributed as being the first Greek philosopher.
Oh, whoops. Who put that there?
Franklin.
Franklin.
What is that, a mini wine?
Yeah, I stole it from Little Bro. Little Bro's like wondering where her cerveza is and her vino's gone.
Yeah, so Thales is the first Greek philosopher, at least he's considered to be, and also the first person in Western history to kind of take a scientific or logical view of the world to say, this is not just randomness caused by the gods. We can actually try to understand this, and we can make sense of it and use it to make predictions. And he was kind of mocked because he was only interested in ideas and just like pursuing philosophy all day, and he didn't have a lot of money. And so
people are like, what's the point? Or they're
like, oh, your philosophy is kind of useless.
Oh, you sit around and contemplate all day.
So what Thales did is he's like, all right, he didn't care about money, but he used his predictive capacity of like meteorology and like the stars, astronomy, to predict a good olive harvest.
Yeah.
And what he did is he put deposits in the winter. He put deposits on all of the olive presses, not only in his own city, but in a neighboring city too, to have the right to use those. This is actually the original options contract, if you think about it.
That's the original speculator.
Yeah, so he put down a low deposit. If he was wrong, he would lose some money, but not a huge amount. But he was right because of his predictive capacity. So there was a huge olive harvest, and he had reserved all of the olive presses in the land. He cornered the market. So everyone had to come to Thales and rent the olive presses from him at whatever price he wanted to charge. So he charged this huge markup. So he in 1 year makes this like huge fortune, and then just kind of mic drops and goes back to practicing philosophy.
True.
He just wanted to prove to the world, like, philosophy is not useless speculation. You can actually use this to apply and get benefit in the world. But he just didn't care about doing that personally because he had this love of wisdom.
No, it's like wisdom can be profitable, and he showed everyone that. That's really good. And it reminds me of like Taleb did some version of that as well too.
I feel like there's a very interesting Thales Taleb like parallel. Is very similar actually.
True. Yeah, because I'd say most people would describe Taleb as a philosopher.
And I think that's how he views himself, and that's how he wants to be remembered, because some of his ideas are very novel and kind of groundbreaking that no one else has really articulated in that way.
And I think his idea of being a speculator, he likes that side of him, but it's just like a little chapter. He doesn't want to be remembered as like, oh, I'm the Black Swan guy forever. Right. He's like, I'm a philosopher. I want to be remembered for my ideas, not that I predicted 2008.
And I know that Taleb knows about Thales because he talks about the story in Anti-Fragile. And I think he makes the argument that this is the original options contract, that it's not that Thales was good at predicting the future, which is kind of how Aristotle recounted the story. But I think his argument is that, well, Thales just understood profiting on uncertainty by making like a small bet. He loses a small amount if he's wrong, but he gains a huge amount if he's right.
No, that's exactly like call options or put options.
Yeah, so I wonder how much like Taleb was inspired by Thales, because also he made a bunch of money with his fund, but I feel like he also just kind of mic dropped. He's like, well, now I'm going to like write books and do philosophy, and I just wanted to prove to the world that I know what I'm talking about. Like, because if you just write a bunch of ideas, people are like, yeah, this kind of makes sense, but how do we know you know what you're talking about? You kind of
Actually
have to prove
applying
yourself.
it, like grounding it, as opposed to just being lost in the clouds. Because I do agree with some of that pushback where it's like, oh, you're just sitting around and philosophizing all day, but what's the practical use of that? So I like that those guys came back and kind of like, well, this applied wisdom, this is how you can also make money or start businesses or do all that stuff too.
Well, and that's the point, is that the OG philosophers, that's what they were all about, is wisdom has to be applied in practice. Philosophy means the love of wisdom, and wisdom is inherently useful to gain some beneficial outcomes, to apply your knowledge in a way that, to understand the world in a way that can help you make predictions and help you end up with the outcomes you want.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, actually, on the Taleb one, I like the don't tell me what you think, tell me what's in your portfolio. Because when I meet people too, I like thinking of that. Like, you can talk about people's opinions indefinitely, but if you ask them quickly, oh, are you investing in that? You seem quite passionate about what you're describing or what your thesis is. And a lot of people are not willing to invest in it, but they're willing to sit around and talk about it for hours on end.
This is like the skin in the game idea, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Another great one from Taleb.
Yeah, and I think that's why polymarket or even like bets, even though I don't think everyone should be doing that, I love that personally. If someone's passionate to talk about something or debate it for a long enough time, then it's like, well, are we going to sit around and talk about it all day, or are we going to get some skin in the game?
I actually like that because you've kind of pushed me on that, or my perspective on that, because I feel like another thing is that pretty much anyone can weasel word their way out of anything. It's like, you were wrong. No, I didn't say that. Exactly. I said this, and like slightly modify their claim. But if you get like a bet, like a bet on some future outcome, well, if you're confident in your views, then let's find some scenario that you think will happen as a result of this. And even a small bet could be $5, could be like, whatever.
It's some skin in the game.
But it's just because now you have to agree to some stakes or some terms.
And take it from me, give yourself lots of time to be right. Don't take short-term bets.
Yeah.
Because that is peligroso. That's dangerous, where if you set a timeline to something and then it doesn't pan out in, like, let's say 1 month or 6 months, and then like a year later it goes up 20x or 30x, you're like, oh, geez, I should have bought leaps.
Yeah, you can be directionally right, but get the timing wrong. And that's, I think, another part of wisdom, is recognizing, because things are so interconnected and complex, that your understanding of it is not going to be perfect ever. So
holding more uncertainty, especially for very specific dates or directional bets.
And that's Munger as well, inversion, considering, well, what are the other outcomes that might make me wrong about this?
Definitely.
One of Munger's mental models.
Yeah, I feel like we definitely have to do a pod on the toad. We're always talking totally wisdom.
The toad.
The toad. Actually, he says in his book, he's like, my kids used to call me like a book with legs.
Okay.
Because he would just sit around and read all day.
Yeah.
Like 10K reports, but also biographies. Or I love the phrase, make friends with the eminent dead. Yeah, where it's like a lot of the ancient sages or this wisdom. It might not be around like people that you're talking with on a daily basis, but that doesn't mean it's lost. You can get a library pass, or now you don't even need a library. Everyone has access to basically all information that's ever existed.
Yeah, and this ties in with the idea of mentors, and your mentors don't have to be someone living. It could be someone who just wrote a lot hundreds of years ago.
True.
Like some of my favorite sages, like William James is an example of this. I've gotten a lot of wisdom from William James that has changed my views on how to approach life, kind of. And yeah, he was writing like over 100 years ago, right? He passed away long before I was born.
True. Because we were talking about Taleb so much, I wrote down emotional intelligence layer of wisdom, where I think how much Taleb hates like the fragilistas, and he talks about that stuff. He can be quite like a fragilista at times on different topics. Like he'll block a lot of people.
You mean like getting emotionally riled up?
He definitely gets emotionally charged, or he'll walk out, or he just won't engage with certain people. But then maybe he views that as like, oh, there's nothing to gain from this discussion.
Yeah, I like this topic actually because I feel like, so there's this concept of embodied intelligence, which is modern research is finding that intelligence is not just in the brain. There's aspects of the body and the nervous system that hold a deep intelligence. And if you look at when you get emotional about something, when you get angry, your body kind of contracts, and now your thinking is narrowed in one specific direction. You can't see the big picture. So it's actually, if you have poor emotional control, you're actually shutting down your thinking in that moment.
No, something I really tried to teach everyone that I was working with in Korea was temperament. Because I could see certain people where I was like, oh, you've never had anyone challenge you in your whole life. Like some people will get flustered very easily.
Right, yeah.
And that wasn't even in my social line of work. That was just working with people that had everything going for them, but they would get so riled up that it's like then the discussion would kind of degrade or almost get personal.
Yeah,
like attacking someone's character as opposed to the ideas that are being presented.
Well, this is interesting because psychologically, there's a few frameworks around this, but people tend to fuse their identity with their beliefs or their ideology or something like that. So when someone disagrees with an idea or an ideology, they take it as a personal attack on themselves. Like their ego actually feels threatened, like it's going to die. So it defends itself like a life or death situation. It triggers the fight or flight response.
Yeah, that's my DI theory of the universe, deep insecurities
The deep
theory.
insecurities.
Yeah, because I feel like you can tell really quickly once you've triggered something in a conversation, especially when you're just talking about something and unintentionally something you said suddenly triggers someone, or their neck straightens up, or they bang the table is a little bit more obvious. But
right. So context for the pod is Nolan came up with this theory of deep insecurities.
Yeah, that was early, actually, like way before I'd read Jung or The Shadow or anything.
Well,
like
yeah,
that.
and then much later I got into Carl Jung, and it's essentially Carl Jung's theory of the shadow, which was a very psychologically well-developed theory that is one of my favorite
The
models.
Shadow's really good.
But it was essentially what you intuited about deep insecurities, which is, why did that comment get that person so upset? Like, that wasn't really that offensive. Or
No.
I don't think that should be that offensive.
Yeah, and I like the idea of playing out different conversations or scenarios, let's say 100 times. So if you were to say the exact same thing to 100 people, and let's say 2 of them got riled up over that, you might sense there's a little bit of a shadow or an insecurity there. Potentially, that's why they got more animated or like flustered in that conversation. And then it's like, okay, why was that? And then you kind of unpack it and you're like, oh, there probably is some shadow there or some insecurity that they're like projecting upon you once a certain word was said or a certain topic was broached.
Yeah, and I like auditing this in myself, where if I notice myself getting fired up, like my body getting tense, or I'll feel some heat arising,
The blaze.
I like to stop and reflect. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Why is my body reacting in this way to this topic or this comment or this question? Because a lot of the time it's actually some uncovered shadow. It's something about me personally that I haven't like realized. So it teaches me something about myself to kind of audit that in real time.
No, that's a good one. It's like the positivity challenge, but it's like the insecurity challenge or the fluster challenge or whatever too.
Yeah, and this is something I've worked on a lot in the past few years, because I kind of, I want my ideas to be right. If I have an idea that I feel passionately about, I want it to be right. And then when someone disagrees with it, there's like a challenge and, I could get heated up. But I actually found it's better for thinking to try to control that response and then fully listen to what the other person's saying and take in the information. Because if you get heated up, you kind of, again, you constrain your thinking. You're already thinking about how you're going to disagree with what they're saying.
And then you're blocked off.
You're not
listening to what
actually
they're
receiving
saying.
the information. Give it like a moment to breathe. Oh, that's interesting.
Ruminate
so in
for
my
a second.
experience,
Yes.
yeah. Because at the
Definitely.
end of the day, we're all just kind of people sharing our own experience. And I feel like wisdom is compressed experience if you think about it.
Definitely.
Because everything we know about the world is through experience, either our
We're
experience
all
or someone else's
empiricists, whether we
experience.
acknowledge it or not.
All human knowledge comes from experience. That's the only way we can receive information. And yeah, so it's either our experience or it's someone else's experience, or it's like a accumulated compressed experience over hundreds or thousands of years. But we're constantly getting new experience in, and compression is lossy, right? Like if you think about data on a computer, if you compress an image, you lose some of the information.
True.
And that's all of our knowledge. All of our knowledge is lossy. So yeah, I think that's a really useful frame actually, is just viewing wisdom as compressed experience.
What does lossy mean?
like you lose some information.
Oh, just lossy, like lost.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lossy, like there is loss involved.
Okay, I haven't
Because
heard
if you
that.
think about it, like a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy, each one gets like a little bit less imperfect because it's not a perfect copy of the original.
Okay.
And this is just the nature of experience because our memory is lossy, right? Like if you're every memory you have, they've done studies on eyewitness testimony where two people who witnessed a crime
Oh
told
yeah, they'll
totally
totally
different
different
stories
account,
of it.
yeah.
And this is the nature of our memory and of our perception. So
Definitely flawed.
everything we think we know is just a model or an approximation of what actually happened. And then over time, the more experience we accumulate. So then if you have this perspective, you're like, oh, what was this person's experience that led them to a different conclusion than me? And then it's kind of like, if I can take in that information about their experience, it only helps me improve my own models.
Definitely.
Because if we're only concluding based on our own experience, that's like very
It's
limited.
very limited, yeah.
Versus
definitely.
like hundreds of humans, millions of humans, like sharing and aggregating experience. That's
Well-
going to be a better model.
It's the Socrates, know thyself.
Yeah.
Because I think that is the whole emotional intelligence, or being able to know yourself and then being able to give other people a chance to express themselves or see which environment, like the product of your environment, why they have that opinion. And I think most people, once you do walk in their shoes, even just understanding their story or perspective more, I'd say that's the biggest problem with conflict in the world, is just lack of perspective. Like, oh, this person has a different value system than me, and without trying to understand why they get there. Because even what's going on in the Middle East right now, like we have very different versions of maybe even where those lines were drawn at the end of wars. Like, oh, we divided these countries up and we separated maybe like the Kurds or like the Palestinians into different areas, where we need to understand their perspective. And then I think that'll help us to achieve like a lasting peace, or being able to like solve bigger problems, as opposed to just like yelling at each other. You're not really talking directly or seeking to understand.
Yeah. And someone's perspective is shaped by their experiences from birth.
Everyone, yeah.
Because people are born in very different scenarios in the world, different cultures, different value systems.
That's why I
And-
think traveling's so good,
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
because you're literally immersed in their environment.
If you've only lived in one country or one environment or haven't really traveled, then you only have this one lens or perspective of viewing things, which is the people that are similar to you. Whereas the more you travel, the more you see like how diverse human experience actually is.
Yeah, I want to put up that image here where it shows the two fish swimming in the water, and the one fish says, "How's the water today?" The other fish is like, "What's water?" That one's really good, because you don't know once you're only immersed in one environment. You have no perspective of what's going on or what other people might deem or understand or interpret that situation.
Yeah, and I like thinking of this in terms of your lens on the world, because your lens, all of our lenses are distorted, right? We're not seeing things exactly as they are. We're interpreting them through our perspectives, our experience, our models. So all of us have some sort of distortion on the lens. And yeah, I feel like a lot of this work is trying to understand. You said know thyself.
Yeah.
A lot of that work is trying to understand yourself, to be like, is this something about me that's causing me to view this way? Or is this something about the reality or the situation? And you don't know where that boundary is. So yeah, I think it's like it's trying to clean your lens more and more. And you do that by comparing your lens with other people's lenses. And you're like, oh, our lenses are different. Why? Is mine right and theirs wrong? Is theirs right and my wrong? Or is it somewhere in the middle? And it's
True.
probably somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and the more of those kind of different perspectives you take in, the more perspectives you're able to see something from, the better you're able to accurately kind of perceive reality.
Definitely. Well, it's like standing on the shoulders of giants. I love that one too. Like, why did I see a little bit further than someone else? Because I stood on the shoulder of giants. Like, I had more perspectives, or I made friends with the eminent dead faster earlier, so I was able to see maybe a little bit. Like, my vista increased.
I love that one too because of the epistemic humility, right? It's like, well, I'm not wise. It's just that I was building on all of this wisdom that came before me, and I saw a little bit further.
And that's why I think it's important to pay homage to all the thinkers or the sages that we like.
Yeah.
I mean, ideas are always borrowed. Like, I forget who said it, but there are no original ideas.
Right.
Everything has been said before in some capacity.
But we're building on it a little bit, or you can have a synthesis of multiple ideas. But I agree, everything is building on what came before it. There's no kind of totally novel idea out of nowhere.
But there's a lot of totally wisdom. Yeah. Bro, I wrote down, wisdom is not pure cognition. It's cognition married to emotional skill.
Okay.
So it's like you can know a lot of information, but if your temperament isn't in the right place, you're not going to be able to use that wisdom or information correctly.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the emotional intelligence one is something that we don't put enough emphasis on, especially when kids are younger. Like we block people into like IQ or a certain like score as opposed to developing other forms of intelligence.
And this is an interesting topic because William James argued in The Sentiment of Rationality, we have this idea that, oh, I'm rational, right? There's a rational way of thinking. But his argument was, how do you know if something is rational or irrational? It's a feeling in your body where that feels coherent. That doesn't feel right. So his argument is that there is no objective rationality. Your sense of rationality is just based on a feeling in your body, which is influenced by your predispositions, the experiences you've had, the models of the world you've accumulated.
Definitely.
That's a really interesting perspective, right? Like,
true.
So yeah, it's making the argument that your emotional system is actually very involved in your thinking, and I think our modern culture doesn't acknowledge that as much as it should.
That's a good segue into how do we cultivate that wisdom?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, there's one more that I wanted to
Sure.
cover on, like, if we're trying to define or categorize what is wisdom. Another thing I want to talk about is this idea of telos or directionality. So telos is a Greek word that means kind of like North Star.
Yeah.
Like, what are you orienting towards? What is your goal or end destination? And we're not always conscious of this. But I think wisdom is also thinking very big picture on long timelines, on larger amounts of people, and figuring out what are we trying to orient toward, right? Because you could have a lot of knowledge, and again, to the Sorcerer's Apprentice example, right, or what we're doing with technology, we have an enormous amount of knowledge. We can do all these crazy things. We can fly to the moon, right? We can do all these things.
Not everyone agrees with that.
Oh yeah, and the flat earthers were pretty upset about the recent moon launch too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like we can do all of these things. Which things are worth doing? And I think this is a big part of wisdom. Which goals are worth orienting toward?
True.
And that can only come from experience too.
True.
Right, because there's like this idea of second and third order consequences, which is, okay, well, you can have a positive first order consequence, but negative second or third order consequences are the opposite. So eating sugar, it's a really good consequence in the short term. Eating a lot of sugar, really bad consequence in the long term.
Detrimental.
Yeah, like diabetes. Weightlifting is the opposite, or exercise, right? It's unpleasant in the short term, but the second or third order consequence is positive.
Definitely, like ice baths or walking on like torture spikes or fire.
Yeah. Are you referencing the things I just ordered off of Lazada, like
Yeah.
the standing spike board?
Well, I think a lot of people have an association with anything that's unpleasant is negative. Like we were talking about in the previous one.
Right.
Where it's like, oh, actually you do need stress. Stress is healthy, but it's in moderation.
Yeah, and then there's examples of really well-intentioned actions that caused negative consequences. So the famous one is the Cobra effect. And this was, I think it was the British in India, there was an overabundance of cobras. And so they wanted to get, yeah, that's a really good one. They wanted to get rid of the cobras. So they thought, what's the easiest way to do it? Let's decentralize it. We'll put a bounty on bringing in a dead cobra. Then the average people want to make money. They'll kill the cobras and then they'll clean up the problem, right? But what smart people started doing is breeding cobras because they're like, well, I could kill this cobra or I could breed it, and then I could just keep making more and more cobras and get a lot of money.
True.
So the British realized people were doing this, and so they canceled the bounty program. But then people had all these cobras and they had nothing to do with them, so they just let them free. So the cobra population skyrocketed.
Oof.
Right, so it's like a well-intentioned, oh, this makes sense. This is a good way to solve the problem, but it made the problem way worse.
Definitely. I can hear the toad in the background, like always look at the incentives. If you get the incentives wrong, you'll get the wrong outcome every single time.
They didn't do the inversion. They didn't consider how might this go wrong.
True.
But that's part of wisdom, right? It's recognizing, okay, well, everything is insanely complex and interconnected, and my model probably doesn't map this perfectly. And what are the things that could go wrong? But even if I think that, there's things that I'll miss. So learning through more and more experience. And then I feel like as people get older and accumulate more experience, we should be able to use this accumulated experience to like apply to the world now. And
should is the key word. Like we were riffing on before, a lot of people as they get older get locked or more rigid in their opinions and mindset and how they live their life. Right. So I think it's always important to mix that up with order, but also you need chaos and diversity.
Yeah, and there's a few things here. So one, I think, is thinking on very long time scales, because our society really incentivizes short-term thinking. All of our benefits come from short-term thinking, even in politics, right? Like a 4-year cycle and a 2-year re-election, or the interims or whatever, midterms.
Yeah, was it with you I was having the conversation? I think it was with you and maybe one of our buddies where we were talking about, okay, the East has actually done quite a few things right, where a lot of the ideas of having a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan helps you because you're able to view things for the very long term as opposed to 2-year midterms. And then a lot of your economic policies or your political ambitions are based around a very short-term telos as opposed to a longer-term one. So I'm not saying like the Chinese or the Russian model is perfect, but for some things, maybe like energy policies or certain economic plans, even for geopolitical things, I think having a longer-term telos is better than a shorter-term one.
Definitely. And yeah, there's an important lesson there. And that's, I think, what is part of wisdom, which is you have to set the goal, you have to set the telos, and the longer term you set that, now the more things are going to orient towards that. So now you're taking all this knowledge and applying it in how do I achieve this goal? And psychologically, there's studies showing that this improves the likelihood of actually reaching the goal if you just set one and orient things toward it. And yeah, if we're not doing this as a society, if we're just hijacked by short-term attention loops, short-term incentives, right? CEOs of companies with like quarterly
stock
bonuses, right?
And,
if everything is short-term incentives, we're just going to get random outcomes.
True.
Or maybe not even random, maybe predictable based on what does the incentive structure incentivize people to do. So
yeah, always look at the incentive structure and
right.
Then skin in the game again. Like, does this CEO actually believe in their own company? Every chance, are they exiting, like selling as much as they can, or are they buying more because they believe in the long term?
Yeah, because it's going to align long-term incentives. And then I think as a society, this is why I feel like we need to usher in the wisdom age, which is people actually thinking about what do we want to do as a society, as a world? Do we want, and I would say like something rough, even like increasing human flourishing, right? Yeah, we're like, okay, now are we trending in that direction or not? Are we using our knowledge to improve that outcome, or are we getting the opposite of that? Because then wisdom is kind of like having this container of which outcomes are worth striving toward. And now you can use knowledge in pursuit of that and have a measurable outcome.
So like how wisdom is being passed down and how maybe we could be better parents, better teachers, better mentors.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking of this in terms of if you imagine humanity as one collective organism or superorganism. So we have the older generations and we have the younger generations.
The incoming wizards.
Yeah, and the younger generations have like a lot of energy, motivation, they want to build stuff. And the older generations should have accumulated a lot of wisdom in their lifetime. But I think also, so on the individual perspective, we said wisdom is applying your knowledge, right, for your own outcomes. I think you can view the same thing as the collective, which is older people who have accumulated a lot of knowledge. How can we apply this in the world now, given that the world is different from the world they grew up in?
Very different.
Because your mental models can get obsolete if it's like...
Well, you have to update them.
Yeah, and you have to apply them to what's happening now in the world now. And is this different from how the world was 20 years ago, 50 years ago? And it is. It's very different. So we talked about kind of older people can tend to get more rigid or fixed in their beliefs or their models.
I think so.
Because those models worked for them their whole life, right? But it's also looking at okay, well, does this model still apply to the world now in this situation? Or can I take all this knowledge in these models and mix it with what's happening now and some novel way of applying it?
True.
This is more like theoretical. I don't have the answers to this, but I think it's an interesting thing to be thinking about. How do we pass wisdom down from the older generations to the younger generations in a way that's not out of touch, right? It's like, well, that's not the world we live in now, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Will Durant said something along the lines of like, wisdom is only given to you after it's stolen your youth. And I think that's what we're trying to do on the podcast a lot, is help people along or kind of speed up that process of wisdom being passed down.
Could you unpack that one a bit, or what does that mean to you? Like, is stolen your youth?
Well, I think it's like the age of reason. Like, I think a lot of people feel maybe around our age, like, okay, now I understand how things are a lot. So I think if we can unpack or help people acquire information or point them in the right direction, so it doesn't have to like steal your youth, means like you don't have to grow old before you become wise.
Yeah, there's another quote. It was from a general or a military guy. I forget his name, but it wasn't even a quote. It was just an article where he's talking about you can learn from your own experience, which involves making a lot of mistakes and errors, or you can learn from other people's experience, which is far less costly, especially in military operations, right, where it's people's lives that are being lost. So he's talking about the importance, especially when you're young, of trying to, like, people have been living,
learn from other people's
for a very long time. There's a lot of accumulated mistakes and what people have learned from those. And yeah, it's trying to tap into that wisdom pool so you don't make the same mistakes.
Yeah, for sure.
So it kind of goes both ways, right? It's older people trying to connect to younger people's reality now, which is different from their own reality. And okay, my accumulated knowledge and wisdom, how could I unpack this in a way that's relevant to younger people? And also younger people realizing, even though older people lived in a different world, there is wisdom there. I just have to view it as a lens or a perspective. I don't have to like wholesale reject it as being wrong or accept it as being right.
For sure. No, I like also thinking of like the AI brings the knowledge, the information, but humans bring the wisdom. So together we can do anything.
We need to bring the wisdom. Because again, the wisdom is, what do we point the AI at? What do we point all this knowledge at? We have to set the direction and figure out which directions are wise and which directions, because I think most people would agree that if you end up with a horrific outcome, then that wasn't a very wise decision.
True.
Even if you're super smart, someone's really intellectual, but they end up leading the world in a horrible direction, that was not a wise decision.
True. And some of it isn't even based on intent, like Oppenheimer or Nobel. Yeah.
Yeah, true. Yeah, definitely.
Like they just stumbled upon certain technologies or discoveries, not knowing how humanity would use that or execute with those.
Right. Oh, yeah. The
execute isn't probably the best word.
Was it Albert Nobel or Alfred?
Alfred, I think.
But yeah, the Nobel Peace Prize, the story behind that.
Yeah, he discovered dynamite.
He invented dynamite, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I guess he was kind of naive, or he was horrified when he saw that dynamite was then used in wars to like kill a lot of people.
That's exactly the same with Oppenheimer.
With Oppenheimer too. Yeah, great movie, by the way. We'll pull up a poster.
Yeah, that one's really good. It can be slow at times, but I love how they even show Einstein in it. Like he crosses paths with Einstein, and Einstein looks very sullen or a little bit lost.
Well, it's slow at times, but that's because wisdom requires patience.
You have to earn it.
You have to earn it. And actually, Christopher Nolan, the director of Oppenheimer, we've talked about, is a really wise wizard, actually, when you watch his movies, like the Batman trilogy.
Those are really good, yeah.
Yeah, so Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah.
There's so much wisdom. We watched them as kids, and they're
that's Alfred.
Yes. Alfred. So Alfred and Fox, like Lucius Fox. There's so much wisdom in all these lines in those movies. I feel like,
if you're young and haven't seen those, definitely pull up the Dark Knight trilogy.
And if you're older, if you're our age and you watched them when you were in your 20s, rewatch them now because you'll get a totally different perspective.
Yeah, why do we fall, sir?
So we can learn to pick ourselves up again.
Yeah, that's so boss.
Yeah, there's so much like very dense wisdom in like really good lines or quotes in that movie.
Yeah, do you remember the one exercise we did on the retreat where it talks about envisioning that you had another father or another mother? I loved your answer of like envisioning, because you're not, even if you had great parents, I think you and I struggled on that for a second, because we're like, oh, our mom and dad killed it. Like we had really good upbringings.
Yeah, so this, just to clarify, that this exercise, it's called like an ideal parents imagination exercise, and especially for people who did not have
and a lot of people
great
didn't,
upbringing.
bro. There was a lot of like sadness, tears, like in that exercise, where for you and I, maybe we struggled a little bit.
Because I almost felt bad to my parents to imagine like different parents, because I think my parents did a very good job at raising us.
No, I think both my parents did amazing jobs. So I struggled with that too.
They emphasize, but you should pick someone who's not your birth parent. And so I think I imagined the father from Batman Begins.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the first part of that movie does such a great job of demonstrating like a father who really cares about the wisdom and passing it on to his kid and raising his kid to be very capable.
No, that's a great answer. That's why I was thinking of that with The Dark Knight. I thought of like a Ron Paul or someone like that, where I was like, I've never seen his moral compass not in the right spot.
Right.
So I was like, if I could teach my son that or my kids that would be amazing as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Nice, bro. I think that's a good way to wrap it up on.
Probably a good note to end on. I think we got a lot of wisdom in that podcast.
Yeah, hopefully we inspired some other people to seek more wisdom.
Yeah, definitely.
Nice,
and I think in our future episodes, we want to talk about some of our favorite thinkers, favorite philosophers, the wisdom of different people, and what we've learned from them.
No, that could be fun.
Yeah. All right. Bro. Let's wrap it up. Good session. See you on the next one.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe.